Welcome to Secure Cyber Connect Live with Warren Atkinson and Jay Adamson, where we're joined by information cybersecurity, talent acquisition, and technology professionals who share their journeys, unique perspectives, and offer advice and guidance.
Our topics on this live events will be navigating the risks of AI, frameworks and solutions, and discussing the Databricks AI security framework. Firstly, we'd like to welcome the following speakers. Arun Pamalupati is the Principal Security Engineer at Databricks, a core member of their field security practice with over 25 years of experience in building data products, including over a decade of experience in building data and AI products. Arun led and co-created the security analysis tool and the SSPM for Databricks. He's also co-author of their Databricks AI security framework and has a bachelor's degree in computer science, cloud security, along with a number of AI and machine learning industry qualifications and certifications. Ram Murali is also a principal secure solutions architect at Databricks. With over a decade of experience in data platform and solutions architecture, Ram has led impactful initiatives at leading technology companies such as Cloudera, and at Databricks has served as the lead solutions architect for over 5.5 years, partnering with high-profile clients including Epsilon, Hertz, and 7-Eleven. His expertise spans across platform engineering, data analytics, and real-time streaming, where he developed solution accelerators, led enterprise architecture workshops, and co-architected the Databricks security analysis tool. Ben Johns is the cybersecurity and risk specialist and an AI risk researcher from ComplyLeft. With over 20 years plus of experience within technology, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and as an external contributor to the Databricks AI security framework version 2, Ben's at the forefront of risk research and has demonstrated expertise in assessing technical risks and developing control frameworks that enable business innovation whilst ensuring robust security posture with a growing focus on AI trust and safety controls. And finally, Chiru Bhavansikar is Chief AI Officer at Arhasi. He leads the development of secure governed AI products to drive productivity improvements and has over 20 years of experience across cloud, data and AI. And Chiru's also held leadership roles at Deloitte, PwC, Cloudera and Dell, and specialises in generative AI, cloud strategy and enterprise AI innovation. Chiru, Arun, Ram, Ben, a warm welcome to you all for the first of Secure Cyber Connect Live, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome everyone. And as we kick things off, Chiru, could you perhaps give us a high-level overview of some of the themes and topics that we're going to be discussing in today's session?
Absolutely. We are going to basically look at how do we actually navigate risks in the AI world. There is a lot of emphasis on establishing AI workflows across the enterprise to optimize cross-functional business operations. And we are going to look at how the risks can be mitigated, how the risks can be addressed, how to take an outlook of compliance and governance in the arena of AI, while at the same time look into the Databricks AI security framework and how that can bring value to the organizations.
So in terms of understanding AI security risks, we know it's transforming industries at a pace. We know only too well that this brings a whole new range of risks. Today, we've got some perspectives from the views of researchers, engineers, architects, and strategists across our panel. So Chiru, to kick things off, what are the most critical security risks that organizations face today when adopting AI tech?
There are various aspects that need to be considered when we are looking at implementing AI. So the biggest factor, I don't know whether you heard, recently Gartner published an article that said almost 70% of AI projects fail in the next couple of years. And that's a risk. If I am a CIO or a CTAO or someone who is embarking on the journey of AI, I want to make sure that I'm able to successfully show the impact of AI. That literally means that I'm not looking and taking a myopic view of how AI can be adopted. Rather, I would take a more holistic view of what are the areas that AI is going to impact, which business functions, which cross domains that it would impact, and how you would actually bring in the various aspects of the security, the compliance, regulations, and at various aspects of AI journeys and AI workflows.
And just sort of looking at the sort of potential threats, there's a lot of them out there, and with so many threats, how can organizations realistically identify, prioritize, and prepare for the risks that come with AI security and those that pose the greatest danger? And this one's to Ben, really.
Yeah, so in order for organizations to realistically understand what the threats are, I think they all need to step back initially and understand how they're going to be using artificial intelligence and what type of artificial intelligence is really going to help them implement their business use cases. So, and it all comes back to cybersecurity principles. It's always about confidentiality, integrity, and availability of our systems, and especially in like a heavily regulated industry, availability is still quite one of the most important things. So when you can clearly identify what you're going to be using AI for, you can then start to break down the barriers and put things into building blocks of what kind of data you're going to be using with these systems. And then at that point, it actually becomes more like a traditional security assessment at that point. And it kind of dispels the fear and the myth about actually what are the risks. And they always come back to the same things that we're all used to, but just in a different context where the output, say like from generative AI, is just non-deterministic. So at that point, you just need to think about what are the novel risks of using generative AI. And it's most likely, if you're putting in front of a customer, it's going to be some kind of like unintended outcome or harmful outcome. So they're the key threats to using, well, from my perspective, what I've seen throughout financial services of what you really need to be worried about and what you really need to prioritize if you're going to be putting this in front of a customer.
That makes sense. And Ram, is there anything you want to add to that, perhaps?
Yeah, I think, essentially trying to foster cross-functional collaboration is a big thing when it comes to that particular, identifying, prioritizing, and preparing for security risks. It is not only the security group within an enterprise that's responsible for identifying and prioritizing, but there is also the innovation centers, the development centers, the field staff, the sales staff, that all have a responsibility to play when it comes to identifying, prioritizing, and preparing these security risks. Typically, we've seen compliance champions be throughout organizations in different departments who spearhead that effort. And then, trying to leverage explainability and transparency is a big one. When you have AI models coming up with responses, trying to show any kind of auditability, like, chain of thought reasoning or using LLMs as judges, etc., to come up with explainability and tracing of what the model generated goes a long way in trying to prioritize and prepare for these risks that might happen.
I appreciate you sharing. And look, I want to commend the team for the Databricks AI security framework. I know it is a hugely collaborative effort across the globe, many private parties sort of contributing to that. And I know that you've mapped it against a number of different frameworks and regulatory standpoints. And as mentioned, I really, really commend you on that. So to kick things off, Aaron, could you share with us what the Databricks AI security frameworks is in terms of the core pillars, what risks are perhaps sort of being posed at the moment, and how organizations can perhaps sort of implement that?
As I work through the content about Databricks AI security framework, let's up-level the conversation a little bit and go back to the original question of what are the most critical security risks for organizations. That kind of derives most of the work and help answer some of those for our customers. So when the biggest challenge or the biggest risk for organizations when it comes to AI security risk is not knowing what the security risks are, and then not educating or not having enough education about those risks within organizations. And at the same time, when AI is happening, like not knowing where AI is happening within your organization, which we call shadow AI, right? So when we talk about AI security risks, we are talking about AI security risks for enterprises. When generally on the web or and on some of the podcasts, when people talk about AI security risks, majority of those discussions are around model security risks, right? Those are very well intended and very important conversations. When someone talks about being able to exfiltrate or copy weights of a model, or another state-owned organization or state-owned threat actors copying one of the large language models. Those are definitely well-intended and important conversations. But for rest of the organizations out there, like in enterprises, those conversations need to be demystified. What is AI security for them, as opposed to for these 5 big model developers, right? Those people, those organizations who are actually training the models, making these models available, they are they have the expertise and they have the resources to mitigate the security risks to their models, right? But enterprises, when they're actually using their data with these models and trying to derive some outcomes, they have security risks too, and those are not discussed enough in the out there. And with Databricks AI security framework, we wanted to demystify, and if I may, I'll share a few slides to make the conversation a bit easier. So let me share my screen. So our goal was to help organizations understand what the risks are, and then, as Ram said earlier, encourage the collaboration between businesses, IT, and security teams. This is another risk that happens a lot in enterprises, because AI is not your typical web application development where somebody in the organization starts building a 2-tier web application and publishes that internal to their organization. AI is happening across the enterprise, so you want to bring in software engineering practices and bring in all of the businesses involved in that use case, and the IT and the data teams and then security teams together if you want to be successful. That's where what Chiru was talking earlier when he said majority of the projects that are started are likely to fail, because to make it to production, you need to have support from all these organizations, involvement of all these organizations. So what we did with Databricks AI security framework is for the rest of the world, not for those 5 companies or 10 companies that are building, AI large language models, or generally, anything to do with like an agents and all of that, right? So what we did was to demystify and provide a holistic support, holistic approach to AI security, is that we broke the AI system into 12 different components, and then we analyze at each one of those components what are the risks that are involved, right? And then we actually catalog those risks, and then we said, okay, now that we know these risks, how can we mitigate those risks, and what are the controls that are necessary? Who owns these components in an enterprise, and how do they deploy? What is the process that would it take to implement that, right? So that's the goal with the Databricks AI security framework. It's as you mentioned earlier, it is not just us 30 plus people who have experience in this world building this, but we studied and mapped the framework to existing controls. So NIST 853, MITRE ATLAS, to name a few. And anybody can actually download this. There is a QR code that you can see here. And then this is available as a white paper. There is executive ebook, and then there is a compendium. That is the most important part. People in this room, everybody from Arhasi to ComplyLeft, Ben, and everybody contributed to this work. So the idea is to first take a step back and think about, when we talk about AI security, it is enterprise AI system security, right? So our goal is not just talking about the models. We do deeply cover that in this Databricks AI security framework. Our goal is to what is the data that is coming into AI, how it is being used, and how are those organizations actually serving AI into users and applications. And then what we did was, after taking these 12 components, we actually cataloged those at each component. Out of the, as you can see here, there are 12 components. At each component, we cataloged the risks. So you can see those risks with the numbers here. For example, component 1, raw data, has 11 different risks. So guess what? Data poisoning is happening from here. And then here on the right side, you have inference request, which is basically the model serving component, where in the serving infrastructure, there are 13 risks. This is where your prompt injection likes of other risks that are going to happen, just to be brief on the coverage. But what we did was we published all those risks. So in component 1, as you can see, there are 11 risks. So we cataloged all of that. And then we made those available in the compendium and in the white paper. At length, we discussed, and we mapped each one of those risks to 10 different standards that are there. So if you're approaching from those standards, you can actually work backwards and see how that is, that transpires, where that transpires in a given organization, so that you know who owns that risk and who should be thinking about putting controls to that. And lastly, now that we talked about risks, majority of the risks are papers and related to AI security. They leave you with a lot of discussions around risks, but there is not that much of emphasis on actually talking about controls. As a platform vendor, we wanted to kind of take that to that cover that last mile that is necessary to help these enterprises that we are talking about and that are using this AI with the controls. So these controls are generic. These are not Databricks specific controls. If you are using your own, another vendor or DIY, you should be able to look at these controls and get a deeper understanding of what these controls are meant to do. And these are mapped to which risks they cover, right? So you have that full mapping. And then if you happen to be Databricks customer, we leave you with specific documentation links so that you can actually implement them. And here in this conversation, and today, I'm going to actually announce that we actually added 4 more controls to the framework because as we are evolving, there are more controls that are necessary, and we are making sure customers are aware of agentic. When you have agents in your enterprise system, you need to think about how you limit access to those the data for agents, so on and so forth. We won't go into the details at this point, but this is all published and publicly available. And if you happen to be on Databricks, as I said, there are different platform capabilities that cover at each component level the respective risks. And then we actually show in the paper at the end, if you happen to be a Databricks customer, which product capability actually helps you with certain risks. So hopefully that's helpful. If there are any questions, or if anybody want to chime in, would be super happy to answer any questions on that.
No, that's brilliant. Appreciate you sharing. And as we move on from that, Chiru, perhaps could you share with us the practical steps that organizations should take, perhaps those in the financial services space, for instance?
Yeah, so when it comes to financial services, like compliance, regulation, risk is the bread and butter of being successful and being operationally ready. And organizations, especially having Arhasi worked with several financial institutions around the world, what we have realized is we encourage them to take practical, proactive steps in terms of how they address the compliance aspects. And now coming back to Databricks architecture security framework, the way Arun has mentioned, it is important to realize it's a perfectly curated framework for enterprises. Now, saying that a framework is actually is a blueprint. Just to put it in layman terms, if you want to get a house built or constructed, you go to a builder, and the builder puts forward in front of you multiple plans that are like curated in nature based on their experience, based on their expertise, and knowing the dimensions of various lots that they have. Now, as a user, now you have to, it's your choice, how you would actually adopt those plans to your needs. Now, that's exactly where the differentiation comes in. Now, what is important for an enterprise to adopt this Databricks architecture security framework is to involve any organization that can help them in this process and take them through this process. An organization that not only knows the blueprint very well, but is able to actually see where are the touch points across functions, across domains, and AI agentic workflow touches. Like for example, if we take we are actually working with a financial institution, optimizing and finding revenue leakage using AI. So this is a workflow that touches various cross functions, finance to accounting to billing to compliance and regulatory. So how do you really, like, when it touches so many functions, what are the different aspects of this architecture security framework that apply at each layer or each touch point, and then how do you map those things and ensure that those are enforced, plays a critical role. Now, every time when we have a conversation with organizations, we literally talk about, at Arhasi, we build AI workflows with intellect, integrity, and insights. What that really means is, intellect means, we build those workflows that are very intelligent and are able to make decisions and can actually can adopt to the variability in the nature of your business processes. Integrity means, like, how do we ensure security compliance out of the box when we bring these workflows into the operationalization mode. And insights is basically, we are going to give you those insights that you are not able to derive today in a timely fashion. So that's literally what it is. So integrity plays a critical role here. So, and Databricks architecture security framework is what we actually bring to the table as a part of that integrity theme. And as you can see here, and every time we have a conversation, we talk about like security, compliance, and data locality. The security, we start from a zero trust policy to ensuring the data resides within their own environment, while ensuring the data is protected at rest and transit while you're working with the AI models and the workflows. Ensuring fine-grained access control when your AI is touching various business functions. At the same time, alluding to clients' requirements. This is where you're mapping architecture security framework to the client's needs, and not taking away the focus on continuous monitoring, logging, automated abuse detection, which is again comes back to the transparency, explainability, and auditability that Ben mentioned, right? And I think Ram mentioned as well. So compliance plays a role. Like, hey, we are not only building this AI operation solution for you, but how do we make sure that we allude to your like local requirements? How do we make sure that we are GDPR compliant and SOC type 2 compliant, and also work with the cloud providers to ensure that business associate agreements are signed, so that your the data that you're actually sharing with the AI services are not are spilling out into the open world. So these are the kind of protections and everything that we bring to the table to protect financial data when you're working with AI.
Obviously, AI regulations evolving rapidly, worldwide. How are our frameworks like the EU AI Act and US mandates or UK's Data Use and Access Act actually reshaping how organizations approach AI security?
That question was for me, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that question's for Ben.
Yeah.
That's for you, Ben. Yeah.
Yeah, that first one. Yeah. So frameworks or acts around the world, like you're saying, they're evolving every day. every day there's a different country that have mandated new laws around how you use AI and like prohibited uses of AI. So I think the way it's reshaping organizations, especially those that maybe aren't used to being regulated by an act, it's actually putting more pressure on them to think how they're going to interact with a regulator. I think that's like the most important part. So from my perspective, when I work with regulators in Australia, is that you really need to take them on a journey on what you're doing. And when you can sit down and explain to them, this is how you're risk assessing, you're applying controls, how you're gradually rolling out things, you're not doing things in a big bang approach that could, break a financial product or something like that, or a critical system. I think that's when regulators will become more confident that you are able to use AI in an appropriate manner and for it to be relied on. So that's probably the most important thing about a regulated industry, is that your systems are relied on by the public. So if you can demonstrate that, I think you have a very good chance of making your regulator happy and allowing you to continue to operate.
Was there anything further that you want to perhaps add to that?
Hey, was that for me? Sorry. Did you point to me? That first part of the question was chopped off.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying, was there anything further that you want to add to what Ben was saying?
Oh, yeah. So I think, innovation is essentially being stifled a little bit. Like Ben mentioned, there is a little bit of a negative aspect when, regulations come in. And rightfully so, because, these regulations, sometimes companies or organizations don't know about, and if they violate it, they tend to get hit with pretty hefty fines, right? So as a result, the other side of the coin is sometimes innovation tends to get stifled when it doesn't have to. So I think by incorporating, accuracy and robustness and cybersecurity throughout the platform, as per what some of the DASF recommendations are, both, with all three pillars, right? People, process, and technology, it can reduce that, risk factor quite a bit. The second part is, people don't want to innovate here because, especially on high risk kind of projects and products, data products, because, they are afraid that the LLM might spit something out that is in violation of a regulation. I think some of the things that we're seeing happening here is, human oversight in addition to what the AI model or the LLM model spits out, in order to minimize that specific risk. So we are seeing a little bit of that change happening. Also, one interesting thing about the UK DUA Act is, they brought in, some amount of children's regulation. So from a children's regulation, there's a lot to do with ethics as well as data provenance. So it's very interesting to see that, some of these AI acts are also looking at, that aspect, because children obviously are a large, consumer of, data out there, both from, products as well as, general information.
So in terms of sort of balancing innovation with compliance, especially within sort of regulated sectors, how do organizations stay ahead of regulatory demands without stifling that innovation? And Chiru, if you'd be kind to answer that one, please.
Yeah, sure. So it's a multidisciplinary approach. First being really aware of like what each of those regulations entail. And secondly, understanding that where those regulations need to be enforced, at what part of that AI workflow life cycle that you want to enforce those. And thirdly, in regulations and compliance play a significant role in like how AI would access data and how the data is ready for AI. So taking that like threefold multidisciplinary approach, where you could be very successful while innovating, also while complying with the regulatory demands. And what we are saying is we don't leave this conversation during the experimentation phase. We in fact bring this conversation very early in the life cycle. When we start talking about, what does your AI use case look like? How do we actually streamline that use case? We start talking about operationalization from day one. We're not looking at like a POC. In fact, we don't even call it a POC. We call it a production-ready prototype for the same reason, because integrity, managing regulatory demands, ensuring compliance, ensuring security is a discussion that we bring to the forefront of that AI thought process. And then when we say that we bring in like to the forefront, we are not just talking like a consulting kind of an approach, walking away with giving like some theory and slide decks. What we also bring to the table is how do you actually bring these necessary tools to innovate while at the same time you're able to actually satisfy your regulatory demands. And we bring to that as well to the table as a part of your even like, AI experimentation. So now by the time you successfully showcase that your idea or the what you intend to do is feasible through a POC or something like that, you also started also almost address the needs for operationalization and the regulatory demands that need to be met. So it's not like you're leaving it to the until you prove that feasibility, because you don't want to see a feasibility of an AI solution or adoption separate to the how do you cater to these important needs of organizations. If you start taking it as a single pointed, single dimensional approach, in especially like then you're good. You can actually there is nothing that really stops you from innovating.
That makes sense. Appreciate you sharing there. And as we move on, Aaron, appreciate if you could give us perspective. Firstly, and then perhaps Ben, yourself, what are the biggest blind spots that C-suites are seeing there, and in regards to AI security, and what immediate action should they be taking?
Yeah, again, I'll try to up-level a little bit, and then definitely we'll go into security side. As organizations start working on their AI projects, I would say, first of all, like from the leadership perspective, not just about doing AI for the sake of doing it, like with FOMO, but instead running it as your traditional business project, right? Like what is the use case, and building the culture of AI within an organization is super important, and making sure that there is business value to as you either build new products or replace existing products. Is there a value with AI, right? Do we have the data to do this AI? And then looking at the things like when you're putting this data in front of AI, others already spoke in the panel around like, is this data ready for AI, both in the perspective of the cleanliness of the data, but also from the perspective of some regulatory requirements or compliance requirements, because it may be our customers may have some kind of obligations to their own customers, right? Like, so as you use data with AI, making sure that you involve the teams that are relevant for the project, such as your compliance officers, your data stewards, governance people, and making sure that you have a plan for putting this specific project into production, right? What that means is, do we have a mechanism to evaluate the outputs of the data, output of my AI system, right? If not, as it was discussed earlier, the quality, won't be there. because if you don't know a way of evaluating your AI product outputs, you would be leaving up to the endpoint to come up with some answers that may or may not be accurate, right? So having said that, the broader area of recommendations from the security perspective, we already touched on few areas, right? Running this project as a software engineering project, AI used to be research in the past, right? Like, a data scientist would take some data and then produce a PDF file or a PowerPoint presentation to a CEO, and that was the end of the AI project. That was a decade ago. Now, AI is part of your software stack. It is part of your enterprise software. So you need to make sure the AI application that you're building, it would meet the same, the standards that your software engineering project would meet. That means, like, do you have the necessary, controls and permissions around as you bring in the data into AI training? And is there people that you are giving permissions to train the data or train the AI, or use as a RAG, or put it in front of some agents? Are you thinking about the simple cybersecurity standards like least privileges? And then as you put this AI output in front of users, did you make sure that your AI endpoints are protected? And then those are only accessible to users and systems that that are intended to be, so that you minimize the exfiltration, or you basically reduce the risk of exfiltrating the data through AI or through AI agents, right? So the meta, like the bigger recommendation is that you need to apply the same standards that you would apply for any AI, any software when it comes to AI systems, because as you by now, as you may have understood, what the important point that I've been trying to impart is that AI as a system is part of your enterprise software stack, and we need to start treating it like part of that. And you need to use the controls and the platform and the capabilities that are meant for enterprise grade system, as opposed to some research that's happening on some Docker container, and then it may or may not make it to production, right? So those are broad, I would say, strokes of suggestions that I would make.
No, I appreciate you sharing. And Ben, from your perspective, is there anything you want to add to that?
So we're talking about what blind spots at this sort of leadership level. Probably the things that come to mind from what I'm seeing is it comes back to the comment around why so many AI initiatives fail. Is probably because people at this level, there seem to be a lot of pressure on using AI to reduce costs and things like that, reduce headcount. And I just think that it's probably at this stage in the game that's a little bit unrealistic, and that's a big blind spot at that level, at that sort of senior level. Some other blind spots, if we sort of take it down a level into a more of a technical blind spot, is organizations, even using like a third-party model API service, there's still responsibility on them to ensure that the model is operating and performing as the way that they need to use it. So things like adversarial machine learning and testing, and bringing the business actually into that kind of discipline. It's not just a cybersecurity discipline anymore. It's actually a business discipline more than anything, primarily because we're dealing with software that takes instruction from natural language. So it's actually a big blind spot that I'm seeing, that testing of models that you don't develop on your own, you're just using as an acquirer of a model. That's a big blind spot.
No, I appreciate you sharing.
Where I'm standing.
No, I appreciate you sharing. And as we move on to the next question, Ram, could you give us some predictions for the next, say, 3 to 5 years, perhaps?
Yeah, so I think, One of the biggest predictions is, regulations are going to get stronger. Compliance requirements are going to get stronger. As a result, explainability and traceability will kick in quite a bit with these systems, which organizations will have to comply with. So getting in front of that would be a pretty important thing. And like Arun mentioned, right, don't look at the systems just with the lens of AI, but look at it from the lens of an end-to-end software system. I think the other thing that's making waves right now, which will percolate to security, is essentially agentic systems. With agentic systems, you can suddenly have multiple agents being hosted on sites other than your own, which you have no control over, which your particular project or product can call, right? So having no mapping to these systems or not vetting these systems could become a very big security risk, which I think standards like MCP, etc., are which are gaining widespread adoption now, will start to surface pretty soon here. So I would say that that's going to be a pretty big risk area. And then maybe the other one is shadow AI. So as we all know, data scientists, AI engineers love to use open source projects. So we'll continue to do so because that ecosystem is really powerful. But flip side, people tending to use certain products within their system which have not been vetted can lead to security threats and attack vectors that they have not looked at before or thought about before. So shadow AI is another prediction that I have that will become a big security concern in organizations.
And the panel, are there any breakthrough solutions that organizations should be prepared for? Any thoughts from our other panelists?
So I would add to in the prediction area that AI in general would become part of your workforce, as in maybe not at the level that we are talking about AGI, but at the level of doing some tasks as part of your organization, like an employee would do. And in the security, we need to come up with a process how you would add individual workers into your IT system, or how you would add individuals into your your applications. You would need to come up with a mechanism of identifying AI as a worker, and then providing and provisioning access to your enterprise systems in a way that AI has just enough access, just like you and I do not have access to HR database, and knowing every colleague's salary is not something that you and I would be provisioned in when we go into an enterprise. Similarly, when you bring an AI system or AI component and an agent, we would start treating them as co-workers, or not necessarily as like an HR level co-worker, but as an enterprise project level co-worker. And they would need to be, we need innovation around that to kind of organize that access.
Yeah, and one thing we ran into very recently, and probably you can consider that to be a breakthrough solution, is that working with a security network operations center, they told us that one of the biggest challenges that they have and the time-consuming process is the identifying and creation of root cause analysis. They take weeks every time there is an incident to create root cause analysis. And we interestingly used AI agentic workflow to actually create a root cause analysis of an incident in minutes. So you can see that there is two angles here. There is how do we use, how do you actually secure AI? And there is also how to use AI for security. And that, now it's the AI is also getting into security as well, the later part. How to use AI for security, which is a very interesting dimension. We started seeing requests already, and we have already proven that it works.
Thank you for obviously the insights you've given us. In just a few minutes, we're going to be heading over to the Secure CyberConnect community platform for a more raw and uncensored and an honest conversation where our guests will be sharing some of their biggest mistakes and cyber F-ups, if you will. This will be followed by a live Q&A where you can engage and ask questions in real time. Access is exclusive via the link in the description. Before we move across, and for any of our listeners who want to stay connected to you guys beyond the live event, where else can they reach out to you?
I guess just LinkedIn, right?
It's all LinkedIn, yeah?
Yeah, it's all LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is good.
Yeah.
Fine.
We're always on it.
Absolutely, aren't we all? So Chiru, Aaron, Ben, and Ram, we'd like to say a huge thank you. I'm sure the community and all our listeners will have found a great deal of value in the session. To continue the discussion, for more sustained engagement, we invite you to now join the Secure CyberConnect community platform, where we offer a range of collaborative solutions for both technology and security professionals. This is, as always, at no cost. This platform offers panel discussions such as these, our weekly podcast episodes, webinars, masterclasses, along with mentoring programs and networking sessions and much more. To learn more and to gain access to the community and any of our initiatives, please visit www.secure-recruitment.com/cyber-connect/. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.